Next up, we have somebody I forgot to thank. And Lynn every year writes an article about Night Lies in the paper, and I think because of her, a lot of you show up here, and so thanks, Lynn.
I'm not sure.
Oh, you're missing the AV guy. You've got to get a friggin' new one. There you go.
That's how.
Thanks, Lynn, for your support over the years, and next 10 minutes is yours to do with what you will.
It might take 12. That's kind of neat. I never interviewed Dan Osmond, but I'm sure if I had, he would have had something to say. This is my book. That's what the cover looks like. And it's published by Rocky Mountain Books. It's just out this fall. It's brand new. It's in the bookstores, though, and I'll be speaking at the Films Fest, the Banff Mountain Film Fest in a couple of weeks. And what my book is, for those of you who don't know me, I write a lot of stories about other people's adventures. So my book is a collection of 60 interviews that I've done for different magazines and newspapers about people having all kinds of adventures all over the world. And there's lots of climbing stories in it, and some of them are like super short, 2 pages. So for those of you who have like short attention spans like me. And so the thing about these stories, there's a bunch of locals in this book too. Will's in there. And main reason that I write these stories, or a big reason, is because when I'm interviewing people and they're telling me about their trips and their adventures, they tell me amazing things, they tell me funny things, and they tell me interesting things. And that's the fun of it. So one story is called 1,030 Peaks and Counting, although Rick Collier, he's from Calgary. He's an Alpine Club of Canada member. He's climbed, I think he's up to about 1,050 now, and he's definitely in the over 50 crowd, and a lot of you young guys in here got to work hard to catch up to this guy. And he spent a lot of time out in the mountains, so this is one of the things he said to me. Climbing peels away all those superficial layers. It's not religious, but spiritual. If I had to choose, I'd have to say I'm an animist. I believe every stream, every meadow, every creature has its own spiritual force. It's an odd thing that most churches are in the cities because there's not much in the way of the spiritual there. And I have to thank Rick for supplying this photo. These photos are all in my book, and the photographers all have credit in the back. This photo is taken by Crystal Lee Mitchell, and she's Carlos's partner and mom of his 2 little kids. Carlos is an interesting character. He's actually down in Patagonia right now. He doesn't climb anything that other people have climbed first, for the most part. He puts up his own routes. And in 1978, he's done like 50 high-altitude expeditions all over the place. But 1978 was the first time that he was in Tajikistan, and it was the first time that he climbed with Russians, and he's climbed with Russians a lot since then. And if anyone remembers their history, 1978 was the middle of the Cold War, so the Americans and the Russians weren't talking to each other very nicely. And this is what Carlos learned on this trip. He ended up in the hospital with altitude sickness. That exposure to our Cold War opponent was life-changing. We learned about a culture that was theoretically our enemy, but our experience was one of warmth. We experienced extraordinary hospitality in a land so foreign from our own. It led me to realize what kind of politics must be involved to name people our enemies. I grew a different way of looking at things. It's funny what you can learn from climbing. This one, I did a big feature on ski traverses, people like really big traverses, and Guy Edwards and a few other people did the granddaddy of them all. They skied for 5.5 months from Vancouver to Skagway up the coast mountains. There were various people who joined the trip for short periods of time, for like a month or 2, including the person who took this photo and who's in this photo. This is Kerry Medig. He's a really good photographer, and he was on that trip. Of the whole coast mountain traverse, Guy Edwards and John Miller were the only ones who did the entire distance, 2,015 kilometers. And I asked Guy about doing trips like that and being in the wilderness for such a long period of time. And this is what he said. The longer I'm out there, the calmer my mind gets. You get stuck in such a meditative and reflective mindset for so long, You become much more open and aware of the world around you. If you're a weekend warrior, you never get out of your daily, regular workday mindset. 5 months, folks. And then there's Steph Davis. I interviewed her last year. She came up to the Banff Mountain Book Festival to promote her book, High Infatuation, The Climber's Guide to Love and Gravity. And Steph's intense. And she, if you're not familiar with her, she's American. She climbs hard, but everything. Big walls, alpine. This is on the Salathé Wall. She was the first woman to free it. And I asked her about intensity. And this photo is thanks to Jimmy Chin. Climbing gives you that time to contemplate. I love that element of risk that makes it urgent and deep. That really captures me. I need it to be deep, serious, life-threatening, intense. That clicks me in a little harder. It makes me focus. I like that directed effort. I do love all kinds of climbing, but the thing that calls to me the most is maintaining technique when I'm exhausted. She did that on the Salathé. Then there's Will. Will is one of my very, very favorite people to interview, mostly because he's so incredibly enthusiastic about the trips he does. He thinks up the wildest things, and then he goes and does them. And if I'm lucky, and I talk to him right after he's got home, he's like so stoked, he's so excited about whatever trip he's done, and maybe it's just a lot of Red Bull, but he's a lot of fun to interview. And this photo is Christian Pondella took this one, and it's a great shot. And these are, this is last year in 2007. They went and climbed, these are abandoned mining shafts in Sweden. They're underground. The temperature stays constant, so the ice that forms in there is just in these mine shafts. And it's pitch black. They had to put up lights and get this really cool shot. I love the footprint, the crampon marks at the bottom of the ice. So here's Will being excited about what he's just done. It's kind of like rappelling into a giant cooler. The ice forms like stalactites and stalagmites. It looks surreal. It forms drip by drip by drip. There's actually a lot of color in the ice. There's iron ore leaching out of the walls, and then there's blues and greens, and whites and greens. The features are just insane, and there's no wind. It was like a movie set where you expect to see an alien come slithering out.